So I've been coaching 35 seasons. That's at four different schools. I started out at Farmington and uh, Spalding and Rochester, and then I taught and coached at Timberlane, and now I'm at Exeter. I've coached jumps, I've coached throws, mainly the javelin. I've coached distance, and now primarily I coach the sprints and the hurdles.
I have coached 50 plus seasons. Actually started in North Carolina at Laney High School, which is renowned for Michael Jordan's high school. Um, Coached there for a couple of years, and I coach mainly distance now, but have had experience coaching just about every event besides throwing events.
Yeah, I've been coaching at Messinic, the place that I actually went to high school, for 54 years now.
Not
And
years,
while I,
seasons.
what, 54 seasons, 54 years, that'd be one more year than I've been born. 50, 54 seasons. And while I've coached pretty much everything, anybody that knows anything about Messinic and running, it's a distance, we focus on distance. But I have coached state championship shot put, discus, high jump. Just kind of mostly we've been known for distance though.
I'd have to guess somewhere around 70 seasons. I started at the middle school at Londonderry when I first started teaching, and I took a little time off and went to Merrimack for a couple of years coaching over there, and then at Londonderry High School. So before Merrimack, I was at Londonderry High School, and then I was at Merrimack, and then I've been at Londonderry since. I'm primarily distance with the cross country, and then when I was doing indoor track and outdoor track, primarily go to the distance. As I've sort of had some more experience, I like to play and learn a little bit more about the sprints. So I kind of wander around and help, but my specialty, I guess, is the distance event, event.
I guess our school kind of took an aggressive approach as far as COVID-19, and made it very clear that there were no athletics to be going on and stuff like that. I've taken I generally would like the spring tend to I mean spring the summer I tend to take a hands-off approach anyways. Like I like the kids to log their miles to make sure that when they come back that they're ready to roll healthy. But I'm not super concerned about exactly what they're doing. And so I basically taken the same approach. Up until we knew that we were off for the entirety of the season, I had given them some basic groundwork on how to stay fit and everything like that. But again, we operate off a dirt track, so we don't do anything specific until we get into late April anyways. And so we just took that same approach for this season as well.
We were sort of given that same directive that we weren't really to have a whole lot of, in terms of giving them workouts and things like that, but we have a fantastic athletic trainer, Michelle Hart-Miller, who is putting out a lot of core stuff and strength and conditioning and tweaking it to things they could do at home. So all of that was being shared through the Google Classroom that we have. So they were doing that, and we were checking in on them and seeing if they were doing those things. And of course, my distance kids were, that's a little bit easier to manage than some of the other events because they can go out and they can do their own thing. And they, for the most part, especially the older kids, know how to train and how to mix it up by doing hills or whatever. And then once we found out the spring was canceled, it, just sort of put a positive spin on it, I guess. You have to, right? Is we started our 2020 cross country Google Classroom. So the positive is cross country season has begun. So we've sort of shifted gears to that, while also, for me anyway, really kind of checking in on those seniors that unfortunately lost their season. So that's more of like a, where are they mentally? It's just a sad thing, a lot of loss going on there. So that's kind of the approach that we've sort of taken.
I did the same thing too, Amy, where I set up a cross country classroom as soon as we know, and to dispense information that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in a similar boat as everyone else, where we kind of tailored some workouts for the first 5 weeks for kids to do independently at home, and then when the season was kind of called, where I just coach primarily the sprinters, they're kind of on their own right now in terms of cross training. I might roll something out for them to do a few days a week over the summer if they want to stay in shape for their fall sports. And then I am still coaching Dante Radagonda, who is still planning on going to the New Balance Nationals down in North Carolina, as if they still have it.
Yeah, kind of similar, but not. Obviously, huge bummer. We just got a brand new track at Co-Brown, and we're very much looking forward to just using the track. And like Coach LeBay was alluding to, the first few weeks we were uncertain, obviously, whether or not we would have a season whatsoever. We actually met as a track committee to talk about what possibilities there would be if we were able to go back, which we all kind of knew was a losing battle. But keep in mind we were there for a few weeks already. So on our Google Classroom, we've kept it on track and field, and we've used that to I think the best potential. And I have no idea what our kids are doing, the vast majority of kids. But we have posted workouts. We've posted, this is all optional, so we're not like checking up on kids and checking off whether or not they do it, but just to provide some structure if they can find a place to do it safely. Obviously social distancing. I know kids have gone on rail trails, have gone on their neighborhood streets. They've gone to some tracks that have been open. The not Go Browns track, obviously, because it's been closed. But just providing some structure to their exercise. And for those that have been focused and wanting to have that structure, we've actually tried to mimic a spring track season as much as possible. Because especially for younger athletes, having, if you're thinking distance-wise, don't necessarily want them pounding miles and miles and miles. That can really, really impact them in a negative way, but also it can be boring. So, throw in a little speed work here, time trial there, and try to, as much as possible, mimic to have a season of development. We didn't necessarily want kids to lose that if they wanted to do it and if they could do it safely. So we made that as an option. We have not transitioned to cross country yet. A lot with the middle distance and sprinters has been us posting and 3 or 4 weeks at a time and not knowing if they got it in, and that's totally fine. But at least we feel good as educators that we provided something of a structure, and especially for sprinters and jumpers and hurdlers who are creative in their backyard, can maybe do something to try to mimic the loss of the track and field season. So that's kind of in a nutshell how we've gone about it. And obviously hugely disappointed. I don't think we have anybody thinking about going to North Carolina in July, but because we'll probably transition to cross country at that point, unless we have sprinters or throwers that have been working out in their backyard that can get some performances to qualify. So that's in a nutshell what we've been doing.
Right out the gates. my favorite competition memory as an athlete would probably be 2002 America East Championships when I was at UNH, and we repeated as America East champions. Just that was a really fun team to be on. One of my better seasons competitively, and that started a streak at UNH for a little while there with our class, because I think we won 3 in a row. And what was the other part as a coach? As a coach, last spring was incredible with our girls and our boys team both winning the Division I championships. That's probably a memory I'll have for a long, long time. I was looking forward to, them trying to defend their titles this spring, which didn't happen, but we'll look forward to next year.
I was still thinking. I was hoping somebody else would go first. I'll start off as a coach because my memory is getting longer. But I can't pick one. There's no possible way to pick one.
That's a bailout.
What's that?
That's a bailout right there.
I'm still gonna.
He's got so many to think of. He can't pick one.
Well, I'm not sure how you guys are, but state championships obviously are great, but there's been so many great successes with like the first time going to New England, the first time placing in the top 2 in a division meet, what have you. So it's not necessarily all the championships. It's kind of just whenever the kids are fully engaged and satisfied and excited, and that huge war comes up. It could be first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. It doesn't matter. But I will say the most recent one, not the most recent one, but the most recent track and field one, which was the first boys championship ever won by Co Brown, which was last spring. Because of this, we had Greg. You can help me out with this, but it was a full track and field team. We scored, I think, like 33 points on the track and 32 points in the field. So a very balanced team, a team that dedicated itself to doing it the right way. As far as they really made sacrifices, made the right social decisions, worked the extra hours, just did everything right, and they came together. I mean, you guys have experienced this, I'm sure, with throwers going to the track when they're done to cheer on the runners, or going to the jump pits, or the jumpers going to the throwing circles or the runways. It was just a magical day. So that's the most recent track and field one for me stands out. As an athlete, gosh, that was a long time ago. So high school definitely jumps out. Growing up in Rockland County, New York, right outside the city, the tradition of racing and competing in the city and at West Point, and I was fortunate enough to be part of a really good program in high school. That was phenomenal. At UNCW down in North Carolina, just had some great training partners, and we did some really cool things. Unfortunately, we never won any team titles in high school or college. There was one conference championship where we were hammering the 5,000 pretty good, and the last lap might have been pretty fast. But other than that, I really do cherish my coaching memories, actually, over my athletic memories. So.
These are hard questions.
Yeah, Greg. A little advance notice would have been good.
Wow. So, competition-wise, it's so many in high school, just so many fun things of, helping somebody qualify or things like that. But I guess I probably would have to talk about in college when we won Division III nationals. I mean, that was, how do you top that? That's pretty amazing to be part of that team. And I remember going in as a freshman, my whole goal was to make the traveling team. And then it was to, once I made that traveling team, do I get to be on that national team, knowing that you could be one of the best in the country. So actually make the team and then to be on the team that won, at nationals, running at nationals, and winning at nationals was, so I guess I'd probably have to go with that. It's tough to beat as an athlete. Coaching wise, goodness gracious. When you win a state championship, or sometimes when you get second, like you said, sometimes your team comes together and just goes crazy, and they were supposed to get fourth or fifth or sixth, and now they got second. That second is just as good as the first. But I always kind of remember those ones. I mean, I just had one last spring of an athlete that her goal was to qualify in the 3,200 for our Londonderry Invitational. And she just did, that last race. She did everything she was supposed to do. She followed her pace exactly. It was just a perfect race, and she qualified. I remember that moment. Um, I remember Dairyfield Park moments when the kids are just giving everything they have and collapsing at the finish line and, breaking 20 for the first time. And so it's hard to pick one. Those titles are good, but I kind of remember those individual moments as well. Those personal wins. Those kind of mean the most. Like, wow, they listened, they did everything they were supposed to, and that's when I'm literally, tears are in my eyes for those kids. So that's hard. Whew. Tough to pick one.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to echo everybody else. It is tough to do to pick that. If I'm going to go with my own competitive memory, geez, I'm pretty sure my memory's not too good, but I do remember, like, if I was going to look at high school, my best performance was at Salem, 1635. I guarantee that course was short because there's no way otherwise. Then as an adult, probably a little over maybe 10 years ago or something, I ran Mount Desert Island Marathon. It was supposed to be like stupid hilly, and it is. And, my original goal was to get under 4, and then I kind of started thinking that I should be able to do better than that. And I ended up, I don't even remember what, I think like an even 8:30 pace or 8:15 pace, I don't even remember what it was, would have worked out to be like 3:42:40. I end up running 3:42:38. But when I look back at my splits, I realized I hit the halfway mark 2 seconds faster than I did in the second half. So I didn't negative split by really 1 second, or even split by 1 second. I remember being kind of pissed about that. And all the hills were in the second half. But so I ran a really great race, but for me anyways. Then I'm going to go competitive, for my teams as a coach. Again, like everybody said, the little things, the kid really hitting it out of the park, there's so many of those, it's hard to pick any one of those. But if I was going to pick, like, we've done reasonably well in Division III, but the ones that stand out the most was the two actually have been recognized for Coach of the Year was the girls team in 2006, because they were supposed to get smoked by Hopkinton and won by 3 points in a monsoon. And then the boys of 2014, I had the #1 returning guy in the entire state on my team, but he didn't show up for school on Friday, so I had to bench him. And I basically had a team made up of a bunch of athletes that had been not kicked off, but had been cut from other teams that made up the bulk of the squad. And, they worked their butts off over the summer and were able to put it together, pulled it out in a tie, actually. So that, for those guys, I think, that competitive experience probably meant a little bit more than the guys that were, ranked going in and were supposed to take it and stuff like that. So I would say those are probably the two that I could pick out.
Some of them are.
So stay
AKA,
short is what he's
skipping a
saying.
bunch.
Be short, be brief.
I threatened them with a paddle that I got my first year from one of my students that said, "Here's your motivation, so go faster."
Just, I guess, show the passion that I have for the sport and hope that rubs off on them.
I think the important thing is to let the kids know that you're willing to invest in them. And once they realize that you're willing to invest in them, whether or not they're the best athlete or the least talented athlete, their motivation kind of grows from there.
I think my approach is I challenge them to be great, and I invest time in them and try to get them to believe in themselves as much as I believe in them.
This is easy. Um, Developing a relationship with the kids outside of school in it's a much more personal atmosphere. So those close knit, just really close relationships, not teacher related, you're now their coach. And that hands down I just love being with them and seeing them do things they never thought they could do.
I'd have to echo that, and then just want to add on top of that, everything that we're doing here, the coaching relationships I have with other coaches that are just invested in their kids as well. I mean, it's just like most of the kids are saying, track and field and cross country in this sport in general is just really, really good at, your competitors or your friends.
I kind of agree with both Amy and Mike. I think just working with kids outside the classroom, doing something that I'm pretty passionate about, and maybe they're passionate about that as well, and just sharing that common goal.
I echo on everything everybody said. Coaching the kids, number one. I mean, everything that's involved with that. If you don't love coaching or teaching kids, you're in the wrong profession. That's what gets me going every year. And then obviously an offshoot of that, we have a great staff at Co-Brown, and an offshoot of that, a great just coaching camaraderie in New Hampshire. I think it's very special, and I love that too. But it all starts with coaching the kids, because we all share that passion.
Oh no! Oh. I'd probably try to stay up past 8:30 at night.
I would probably run another marathon.
I'd go Olympic trials in the 5,000 or 10,000 and run faster than I ever could in my life. I'd be obviously a childhood dream of everybody. So
He didn't say fantasy. He said if you couldn't fail.
I can't fail. Okay, I'll get an Olympic trial. I'll go after Olympic trials qualifying time, even if I totally have a piano on my back at the Olympic trials and get lapped 3 times. I don't care. I just want to qualify for Olympic trials. How's that?
Poop your pants, maybe.
That's a bit much, but
I don't even know how I would answer this. I don't know. I try to be a professional athlete of some sort, so I have no idea. I really don't.
Mr. Hall, what would you do?
Oh.
Of course not.
Of course not.
Yeah, I do. I wear the same shorts to every meet.
I do actually.
That's not a lie.
He does, man. Sometimes you could smell him before he's coming.
I wash them, but I wear the same shorts. All right.
I actually have a hat that I usually adopt each season, and I wear that every meet.
Not really. I do like, sometimes we'll have, during the championship part of the season, we'll have them, have a day off towards the end of the week. And I don't like them to have Friday off, because I like to see them the day before the big meet. So they have Thursday off. So that Friday, I just don't feel comfortable if I don't see every one of them the day before the meet and know that we're all good, we're all ready, we're ready to go. So Thursday's a better day off. Yes, that's kind of, I don't know. In high school and college, I used to have running socks. I had special socks that I would have to run, but coaching wise, I haven't picked up on any.
I'd say the only thing is, and this is especially true with cross country season, but it's also true, championship season for track. I tell them they're not going to get any good information out of me after Thursday. Friday, don't ask me anything, because I'm going to be out of my mind.
Can you give us an example of that, Mike?
I think I already have.
That was his first short answer, Tim. You're going to get him going again?
Yeah, that was my goal. Sorry.
I mean, I have a saying that school records are great if they happen, they happen. But I'd rather hang a banner, and that's kind of what I've instilled in a lot of my athletes. This year in particular, Dante probably would have broke a couple school records, and he kind of got robbed of that unless he goes to North Carolina. But the athletes are going to be remembered whether they break a record or not for who they were when they were at that school. And, as long as I'm coaching there, I'll tell stories about them. And it doesn't have anything to do with their school records. It'll be maybe how they practiced or maybe what kind of teammate they were. And, records are great, but they're not the end all be all.
Yeah, that's certainly a casualty of the COVID situation, but I'm sure, like the other coaches, we've really been preaching them to look at the silver lining, the positive side, and life's not going to be perfect, and it's obviously far from perfect during these few months. So we try not to spend time thinking about that. Spend time thinking about how you can improve as a person and as an athlete in this kind of climate.
Right.
I have the luxury that, being distance orientated, we, for good or for bad or for whatever reason, we really look at cross country as kind of our bread and butter. And so while I did have some senior athletes looking forward to a senior spring track and field season, I think it was easier for them to go without their track and field season than it would have been for them to go without their cross country season. So we got lucky, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's, all those, it's hard because all those things that they're saying, LeVay and Coach Cox is true that you go with the banner, but it doesn't help them right now. And it's so hard, even if it's the banner, maybe this was your year to get the banner and now you don't get that. And, on top of all that, they're losing their graduation and their baccalaureate and all the other things. So I feel like I'm running out of things to say because there's nothing to say, it's, especially if this was the year that you were planning to do that and it's just gotten taken away from you. So I wish there was a way that we could, somehow have it. And that's why I was really hoping we'd get something, but it's hard.
I think that's where the perspective talk comes, because obviously it's a world pandemic and there's other parts of the country that are suffering a lot worse than we are, at least for the most part. Give or take, people are healthy and they're able to get out and exercise. And I've fallen back on that a bunch. This season, it's just so hard. Everybody's right. It's just tough.
And I think what's kind of cool, and I found this with my own kids and doing these interviews with kids across the state, we really have an amazing group of kids that are in this sport, and the answers that I've gotten and the perspective that they've had, they're doing an awesome job, even though I know they're sad and I know they're hurting. They really do try to look forward and say that, here's where we are. And that was kind of the coolest part of these interviews for me, to meet kids from all over the state and the stuff that they were saying, they were really trying hard to this is where we are and this is the world and we got to do what we can. They really are fantastic kids. Mm-hmm. I think those are the hardest kids, the ones, everybody, like those star athletes, the studs and all that are losing their records. Those are exactly what you're saying. But the kids that aren't running in college, like this was it, like they don't get they don't get closure. So if we could, I would love to come up with something creative where, we have maybe things open and in August we have something where these guys get a last thing, let's close it out and let's do I don't know. I'm just thinking as I'm talking here, but they're done. Their competitive life for running is done and it just ended, so.
Excellent. This might sound a little weird. I actually got into coaching because I thought I could do a better job than the coach I had when I was in high school. And I had started developing some ideas of what I like to do if I was in that position. And then I ended up in the position, and I realized I didn't know anything. And I really started asking around to the people that I respected the most in that were doing it. And Scott Clark. I actually went up the first time I wanted to get into the Co-Brown Invite, and I asked Brent if we could get invited, except for I had no idea that I was actually talking to Tim. So he said something colorful actually at that point. I won't repeat because that wouldn't be appropriate. But I just at first I think I wanted to do it to prove I knew something, but it's certainly not the reason I'm doing it now, because I don't know. Pretty sure I can't prove anything. So that I don't know if that answered your question. I'm pretty sure I just totally changed it up, but that's what
Greg,
it is.
Greg, what was the question again? Mike went so long I forgot the question.
You fell asleep.
Well, I had a pretty good idea. I wanted to be a teacher and a coach when I was in high school, and I was lucky enough to actually have one season where I was coached by Amy's dad in the fall. And back then when we were in high school, it was either Coach Snell of Merrimack or Coach Martin of Londonderry winning state championship after state championship. And I never really had any crossover time between when Larry Martin was coaching and myself, but I certainly have picked Coach Snell's brain throughout my coaching. I talk to Coach Cox all the time. I talk to as many coaches as possible, because you can learn something from every coach. Maybe they're doing something a little different than you're not doing. Maybe they have an idea of how to get kids out. It's great to just talk to different coaches and get their perspective on things. So I don't necessarily think there's a coach that I try to model myself off of, but there's coaches I look up to and I've learned a lot from. Coach Snell, Coach Belanger of UNH, Coach Martin for sure. And I think that that's kind of where I'm
at. Mine's pretty easy. Growing up with Larry Martin, so I sort of, that was my world. But I even in high school, I knew I wanted to be a teacher and a coach. That was just what I always wanted to do. But I was very fortunate in high school and college as well. I mean, a lot of people don't believe this, but my dad was never my coach. He was my dad. So because I had Jeff Johnson in high school as a coach, my dad was okay stepping back and letting Jeff Johnson coach me. If I didn't have Jeff Johnson coach me, I'm not sure how that would have gone. But because I had him, he was an amazing coach, and the relationship